What is going on, guys? I'm Optimus Phillip, and I kinda have mixed feelings about this week's episode of Percy Jackson. It did have a lot of flaws, but at the same time, it has its fair share of good moments, so in the end, I guess it all balances out, and I didn't hate this one. So the episode begins with a scene of Tyson waking up underwater after the Ironclad is destroyed, which I was not a huge fan of. I think it takes a lot away from the scene later on where he shows up to save Percy. I think that scene would have been a lot more impactful if the audience had been allowed to think that Tyson was dead right up until then, so there could be this big moment of surprise. As it is, it feels a little underwhelming. We get our first real showcase of this new version of Polyphemus here, and it is pretty interesting. It's definitely not book accurate, but I actually did kind of enjoy listening to him wax philosophical about the joys of living alone on this island. I also found it really creative the way that he uses his voice mimicry here. Basically, every time a satyr comes along, he learns more about the modern world, like about anime or airplanes, and then after he eats them, he keeps their voices in his collection and sort of has conversations with himself in their voices to keep himself stimulated. There's also this moment where Polyphemus tells Grover that it was Pan who brought the fleece to him in the first place, which is certainly an intriguing idea. I'm guessing that they're going to pay this off in Season 4 when, spoiler alert, Pan does finally show up and explains why he disappeared, what he's been up to since then. I'm guessing that they're going to explain that there. And yeah, I'm genuinely curious to see what direction they take this. There's a fun little Luke and Annabeth scene in this episode. While Percy is off keeping watch for Polyphemus, Luke iris messages Annabeth to try and warn her about what it is she's getting into. And they have a bit of a confrontation that I think is a really good character moment for the both of them. Annabeth makes it very clear that she is not happy with Luke's decision, but still believes that she can get him to see reason. And Luke seems genuinely concerned for Annabeth. Of course, we later see that there was a layer of trickery to it, but I do really like this new, more genuine version of Luke. I'm not entirely sure how it's going to pan out in the end. Luke's anger was a really defining part of his arc, but yeah, I do think this feels like a natural progression for the character so far. And then they follow that up with what is probably the single funniest scene in the show thus far, where Percy and Annabeth cover themselves in fleeces and pretend to be sheep to sneak past Polyphemus. Like, they crawl around making bleeding noises and everything. It is genuinely hilarious. Honestly, I think it's more entertaining to watch this than if they actually had stuck to the book where they just do the Odysseus thing and cling on to the belly of the sheep. I honestly like this better. This is a change that I actually approve of. I do have one big issue with the production design of this episode, and that is that it makes the Golden Fleece feel kinda weak. In the book, it rejuvenates the entire island, turning it into a lush tropical paradise. Here, the fleece only seems to be affecting a really small area around the tree that it's hanging from, while the rest of the island is a very dry Mediterranean climate. I'm guessing this was done to sort of create a contrast between what the fleece does and what the island would look like otherwise. But I don't know, I feel like they could have accomplished more with like a half and half type thing. Maybe if they had included the chasm from the book, that could have been a neat dividing line. I don't know, maybe it's just me. I know a lot of people are okay with this, so I guess it works well enough. I just would have liked to have seen them do something different. There's also this really weird moment where Polyphemus seems to sense that the fleece is being taken somehow. They never really explain it, and I don't quite see how these two are supposed to be connected, so it kind of just feels like a forced way to get Polyphemus back to the cave. So Tyson shows up to fight Polyphemus, and it is genuinely cool to watch. They wrestle with each other, Tyson throws Polyphemus around. It is kind of silly looking, but in a weird way it works. The fight ends with them both going over a ledge, which I found kind of odd, because you can't pull a fake-out death twice. That's just not how this works. But after all that's over, the episode ends with a really interesting dilemma. Annabeth has been knocked unconscious by Polyphemus, just like in the book, and is going to die if the Fleece doesn't heal her. But Percy and the others are all trapped in the cave, with only a small gap to reach through, and the only person on the other side is Luke. So if they want to heal Annabeth, they have to give the Fleece to Luke. Percy naturally wants to help Annabeth at any cost, but Clarice realizes that giving the Fleece to Luke would be dangerous because then the tree would die, Kronos would come back, and camp would be destroyed. Now, Percy, of course, takes the Fleece, gives it to Luke, and Luke does use it to heal Annabeth, and then takes them both back to his ship. But it is a genuinely well-done moment. It's always interesting when characters do the wrong things for the right reasons, and this does tie in with Percy's whole fatal flaw, so yeah, there's some adaptation points there as well. Though at the same time, the whole scene is kind of predicated on an idea that doesn't really make much sense. Percy asks Luke to use Backbiter to open a portal into the cave so that they can get out and give the Fleece to Annabeth, but Luke says that only one person can go through and he already used it, which doesn't really make any sense at all. First of all, Season 1 ended with Luke asking Percy to come with him through a portal that he opened with Backbiter, so there's just an inconsistency there. And also, we know that Backbiter can be used multiple times. Like, Luke used it once at the end of Season 1, and he also used it again earlier in this episode, so I guess there's like a cooldown, which was never established before for anything, and honestly just feels a little contrived. So yeah, that does kind of undercut things a little, but overall I still enjoyed it. And then to cap it all off, the episode ends with our first full look at the hippocampi, plural, it's not just rainbow, and I do have to admit, it does pay off really nicely. They do look really cool. So those are my thoughts on episode 6. I guess I liked it, but I did notice ways that it could have been better. Now let's take a look at our bingo cards, and let's see what we can mark down this week. Let's see, Polyphemus didn't really make any promises in this episode like he did in the book, so yeah, this one's kind of out. Polyphemus knows who nobody was. They don't really do the nobody ruse the same way that they did in the book where Annabeth pretends to be nobody. Here she just kind of mentions him and taunts him about the incidents, but he doesn't seem surprised when Annabeth says that nobody was a pseudonym, so yeah, I guess we can count this one. Rainbow was not the only hippocampus, as I was saying earlier, so yeah, sorry if you had been banking on that one, you don't get that. And no man-eating sheep. I don't have that on this bingo card, but if you do, go ahead and mark that down. Now, I will say that I was looking at the bingo cards earlier today, and I saw that there was at least one person who had all the squares that they needed for bingo, so if that is you, please post it in the Discord server so that I can give you your shout-out, and yeah, that's going to be it for me this week, so until next time, this is Optimus Philip, rolling out.